One of the things that intrigues me is how do you balance all of the competing interests? So you're a wife, a mom of 3 kids, you got a coaching business and a practice that's growing. What's a week look like to you? How do you keep all those balls in the air? Well, hello and welcome to the Jay Sterling Hughes Show, where we share the straight truth on how we are growing a family law practice. Over the past 9 years, we have grown from 0 to 25 attorneys and over 15 million in revenue. And my purpose here is to document our journey and to share with you what's working and what's not working in our practice, with hopes that you can take that, you can recontextualize that for your practice and shorten your success curve. I have an awesome guest today. I'm so excited to learn from and to hopefully turn her upside down and drop all of the truth bombs out of her. Welcome Jennifer Gore-Cuthbert. Now, so what we're covering today is a ton of inspiration and really practical stories on how she grew her firm, dealt with the startup challenges, and then now she's scaling her practice quite successfully in Atlanta. She is the owner of the Atlanta Personal Injury Law Group. She has a coaching business where she comes alongside other attorneys and supports them and helps them achieve what she has. She's also the author of Tiger Tactics from Zero to Law Firm CEO. I don't know about the zero part. I don't think you ever were a zero, Jennifer, but maybe you can unpack that. And then I first heard about Jennifer on another podcast, the Profit with Law podcast, and I was just enraptured with her story. So here we go. Jennifer, how did it get started? How'd you get in law?
I actually started my law firm the day I got my license, after I graduated. So it's kind of a crazy story. I went to night law school and I worked as a paralegal in a personal injury law firm during the day. And I worked in the law school as well. And I felt pretty confident by the time, 4 years or 3.5 years had passed that, I was doing a lot of different things, and it was a small law firm. So, when you work in a small law firm, you wear lots of hats. And the other factor that kind of was playing in was that I originally failed the bar the first time, and then I had to take it again. And so by the second time, when I took it again, I was 9 months pregnant. And so I had to take the bar basically my whole pregnancy with my daughter. I was studying for the bar. And failing the bar was devastating. It was emotionally, financially devastating. And so when I got that license, when that letter came in the mail, I remember literally getting on my knees at the mailbox and just crying to the sky that I never had to take a test again. And I was almost crazy. I was like, I'm opening my law firm right now, So
what did you do from whenever you found out you failed the first one and then you passed
I
the second one?
studied again.
Okay. A whole 6 months. Yeah.
I mean, it was really hard. I mean, I knew that I couldn't work full time. The crazy thing is that I was the Barbary rep, if you remember what that was.
Yeah, I do.
I was the student body president. I was the school cheerleader. I mean, I was so involved in the school, but I was a worker and I was probably working too much. That's been my nature. I've worked since I was 14 years old. I just always had a lot going on. And I think, just trying to do all that and study for the bar and be pregnant was a little aggressive. But, at the end of the day, it worked out. I passed and I started my law firm with a 2-month-old baby. So I thought about this the other day. I've really never owned a business without having a child. I've always had this law firm with my daughter. And so I've kind of the reason I was thinking about that is I never had a period of time where I owned a business and I was childless and I could just work 25 hours a day. I've had to navigate how to juggle those two really from the very beginning,
Wow. So was the law firm that you started when you had your little girl, is that the same firm that you run today?
Correct.
Okay. So when you started, what was your practice area of focus?
Just personal injury.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So how did you manage the cash flow for that? Because let's say you take in a client on day one, you're not getting paid for a while.
The crazy thing about me is I was so excited to do this, and I literally was clueless on the idea that the contingency business model does have cash delays. I mean, I don't, when I say I was clueless, like it never was something I was thinking was going to be an issue, because I was thinking any money I make is a win, you know? And I ran this out of my home initially, like my spare bedroom, you know, and so I had very low overhead, and I was just out there getting cases, and I was thinking when they pay, that's way more money than I ever have made, because I was a paralegal, you know, so I wasn't like I think the luxury of that is I wasn't coming from working at a firm making $100,000, or, you know, I had everything was just up for me at that point. I mean, and what I would say is the first year I only made $50,000, but I started in like July. So, you know, it was only like $50,000 that first 6 months. But the way that it kind of cash flowed for me initially is I went to my friend's firm who had taken on personal injury cases that maybe they shouldn't have taken on because they really didn't do personal injury. And they said, hey, we need someone to work these cases. We'll split the fees with you 50-50. So these cases were kind of already ready to resolve. And so I think where there's a will, there's a way. Like if you put it in your mind that I'm going to find a way to make this work, you're going to find the way. If I had been told, like, you know, if you start a personal injury firm, there's no way to make money the first year, that like maybe would have gotten into my frame of mind. But I had no one telling me that.
Yeah. How did you get your first couple clients?
Well, because I will say in law school, I was a big networker. I worked in the library. I knew everyone in the school. And again, I was involved in the student government, and I was always marketing myself. And I really felt that law school was an important time, especially because I lived in the market I went to law school. I went to law school in Atlanta. I lived here, and I knew I was going to practice here. So I felt like the relationships I had were going to really be an important part of me owning a law firm. So I went to everyone and I said, I'm opening this law firm. You guys know I've been a personal injury paralegal for all these years. This is my passion. This is what I'm doing. Please send me cases. And naturally, my one friend from law school sent me my first case. And I remember being so excited, like somebody's going to let me be their lawyer, you know?
So how long were you a paralegal before you started practicing law?
3 years.
Okay, so you had a fair amount of experience. You knew what a pleading was and all that work.
Yeah, and I was signing people up. I was doing case management. I was gathering records. I was drafting settlement statements. I was doing some marketing. I was
all by yourself.
I mean, I was in one of those firms where you're kind of like the assistant to the attorney and you do everything. And I have so much respect for legal professionals that are not lawyers. And I think that was such a good thing for me to do, because people know that are in the industry that oftentimes the legal support knows more about the case than the lawyer, you know, at certain stages, because they are often the main point of contact with the client. And I sometimes think that lawyers that never were a paralegal or, you know, a support member don't give the respect to the legal team and how critical they are. And I do think that is, you know, part of the way we treat our team is like, I really say it all the time. Everyone in this law firm is important. It's not just the lawyers, you know. Yeah. In fact, the receptionist is one of the most important people in the law firm.
Yeah. First person the client meets, usually.
First impression. Yeah.
Yeah. So were you completely by yourself? This is just from a timeline perspective. This was about 2013 when you started your practice, right? Okay. So for that first 6 months, were you completely by yourself running the house?
No. So I got assigned an intern or like a mentee through the law school. Okay. And they said, hey, this girl is assigned to you. And I said, hey, do you want to come work with the law firm? And, you know, it was like a low risk situation because I thought she's just going to come for the summer. If this doesn't work out, that's a low commitment. And then once I had someone working there, I was thinking, I need more people. Like, I don't want to be here alone. So she stayed with me.
Was she coming to your house, working out of your house with you?
So no. So,
Okay.
I ended up finding a woman who had a personal injury law firm, who had a big office, and she had a conference room and some extra offices. And I said, okay, I can't, this is back in 2013. Working virtually is not the same as it is today.
Yeah.
And I had clients calling me and saying, I just want to swing by your office and drop these documents off. And I felt like a fraud. Like, I felt like, at that time, if you were a lawyer and you didn't have an office, it felt like a little sketchy.
Yeah, for sure.
So I was like, you know what, I'm going to rent an office from this woman. And then I had access to like the conference room and different things.
Okay.
And so it kind of gave the appearance that we were bigger than we were. It was a very nice office. And that's really where it started. But as time wore on, that really was not something I came to realize. Like, I really like having my own space.
Yeah.
There are certain things you give up when you're renting someone else's space. Like, they suddenly need the conference room. They're going to take priority. Or she used to bring her dog to work, and like some of my clients were afraid of her dog. And,
Boy.
there's certain things like I just started to think like, this is not a long-term solution for me.
So in that first 6 months, Jennifer, was your top line 50 grand? Is that what I heard you say?
Yeah, like that first, it was like we made 50 grand, and that was like, this is great.
Okay.
So
do you recall what your expenses were that year? I mean, what did you take home?
I could tell you that if I looked it up, but I feel like it was minimal expenses, low overhead, I would have to look it up, but
yeah,
it felt like this is getting somewhere. It felt like, I'm potentially replacing my entire income for the whole year, and this is only half a year,
Yeah, that's terrific. I mean, from starting from dead stop to making 50 grand in your first 6 months in personal injury. So that means you got to get the cases in, you got to resolve them and get paid before the end of the year, which is super hard. So you get into the second year. What happened in the second year? Or that first full year, I should say.
Second year got harder, or that first full year got harder because now we're taking on expenses. Now I get an office. Now I got to pay bills. Now I got to pay, all these bills. And, you're starting to think like, okay, every dollar I make, it's not really coming back to me. This is like, now you're starting to get a bunch of cases, and you're realizing like, I have cases, but I need manpower to get the money in the door. The issue with personal injury is it's like a pipeline, and it's like, if you don't have the manpower to pull the gold out of that pipeline, you start hitting like cash issues. So, meanwhile, I felt like at that point, you're still trying to spend a lot of time rainmaking and shaking hands and meeting people. So I felt very pulled in different directions. Like, we have work to do. We have a minimal amount of people to do the work. And I've got to like focus constantly on getting new business.
Wow. So did you start to hire more staff in that first year?
Yes.
This is 14. Okay. How did you go about doing that?
A lot of my like frustration at that point was like, when you have a very small business, just like I described the business I work for, you're wearing a lot of hats. And you would say to someone, oh my gosh, this has to get done. This is a high priority. And also this has to get done. And also this has to get done. And at some point, there's no high priority because everything's a high priority.
Yeah.
And people that, you have to hire at these stages have to be really jacks of all trades. They're really not masters of anything.
Yeah.
They have to be able to do many different things and juggle. And oftentimes as their leader or their manager, you're like, it's frustrating because they don't have the ability to just focus and do one thing really well.
Yeah. When was it that you hired your first attorney?
Okay, so that wasn't probably until year 3 or 4. And That was, I started getting business coaching at year 2.
Okay.
And I noticed that all the people that were scaling had more lawyers, and that there was a certain amount of money that people basically capped out at. And I was well under that, but I also realized like I was just like working like insane hours. I was working crazy hours. I had no time to myself, and I was really personally unhappy. You know, when you get into that like year 3, you're really like full steam rolling, and you're pulled in a lot of directions. I don't know if that was your experience, but just getting the business off the ground, you know, there's a level of just being pulled in a lot of directions.
Yeah. So the thought process that you went through to make that first decision to hire that first lawyer, what was that like? What did you consider? What are some of your concerns that you had going into that?
Well, the biggest issue back then is the law firm was called the Gore Law Firm. And I had built the entire brand around myself. And I started realizing that even if I hired this great lawyer, I'm telling people, my business was heavily referral at the time. You're going to get me. I'm amazing. I'm an amazing lawyer. I'm an amazing negotiator. I am going to put my heart and soul into your case. And I built this brand that was basically unscalable. And I see that this with a lot of lawyers. And I do think referrals play a big role in the beginning for a lot of people. It's very cheap to get cases via referral, you know, or at least it feels that way in the beginning because you don't have to outlay money. But, you know, you might be paying people referral fees in personal injury.
Yeah. So as you're thinking about hiring, you're also realizing that you have a brand issue because you're known as, it's all personal brand, rather you're trying to make it an enterprise brand where you can scale it. So which did you do first? Did you change your name first, then you hire, or what was that thought process like?
I think I hired a lawyer, and that's when I started to realize like more of what an issue it was. And then I changed the name to Atlanta Personal Injury Law Group, which was pretty radical at the time, back in 2017 or 2018. Nobody here in Georgia had a trade name. It was actually thought that a trade name was not allowed. Mm-hmm. We found a loophole so that I could do it. And it took off pretty quickly, the brand. And I felt like when we created that brand, it felt more in line with the vision I had for the firm, being a much larger firm. And I imagined people like wanting to come work for Atlanta Personal Injury Law Group and understanding like what the mission of that firm was versus like my name. And I also had a vision of having a firm that had many different stars that worked there, and it not just being about me.
Yeah. Wow.
You know?
So you mentioned a moment ago about there's you didn't call it this, but there's a break point that firms get to in revenue, and then they just kind of stall out, but you were below that. So first question, what have you seen as that break point? And then how did you push through that?
Well, for me, I had to hire more lawyers. You know, I think it really ranges based on the person. I think it's around $1.5 million to $2.5 million. That's where I see like a lot of solo firms really like, that's where they hit they can't work harder. There's no more hours in the day. Unless it's a really like insane litigator that is doing boutique litigation, personal injury cases where each case is a multi-million dollar case. And I do have friends that do that model. That's more rare. And that's a whole nother business model than scaling a volume personal injury firm. But I really see people get to their ceiling and then they'll have multiple years where they really can't get above 2 million or 2.5 million.
Yeah. So you started to hire, and you hired your first lawyer, I think you said around 17 or 18.
Oh, and I was terrible at hiring lawyers. Oh,
is that lawyer still with you?
No.
Okay. Oh, there's a story here. I can't wait to hear it.
You know, a great person, but definitely not meant to work in my firm or do. Honestly, I don't feel like the person was meant to do plaintiff's work. I think that they were a defense attorney. And I have like different perspectives on that now, but I didn't know what I didn't know. I mean, the story of my life is I'm just like making mistakes and learning. But
So,
yeah.
so what's the difference in mentality between a PI lawyer and a defense lawyer that you've seen?
So some of the issues were, a defense attorney in their heart of hearts doesn't believe the client is injured. So it's very difficult to champion their injuries if you believe that everyone is really making up their claim.
Yeah.
But, there's a lot of benefit to hiring defense attorneys because they have a lot of inside knowledge about dealing with the insurance company. And I actually now have some people that work for me now that were previous defense attorneys, but in their heart of hearts, they're plaintiff's attorneys. I really feel like you're either really a defense attorney, which you're very skeptical of people and what they're saying, or you're a plaintiff's attorney, which is you really believe that people are not making up their claims.
Yeah. Interesting. Wow, it's fascinating. So you've seen some attorneys that are defense.
Yeah, in your
originally.
world, it's kind of different.
Yeah, it's way different. Because we get clients sometimes that you're embarrassed to represent them because they're not great people. You would not bring them home for, a dinner with your family because they just have a lot of challenges. So those are super hard to represent. Very, very difficult, I would say.
I can definitely see that.
Yeah, it's not everyone's the white knight.
Think about it. In our world, in the defense world, there are attorneys that are working to, in a sense, they're doing some pretty crazy stuff where, they know somebody's claim's worth $500,000 and they're trying to force someone into taking $100,000, And so having them switch over to the plaintiff side can be a challenge.
I think I've done 2 PI cases in my entire life. And one of the ones that I started with was a guy who slipped and fell at our local main grocery store, which is called Pick and Save here in Wisconsin. And he fell and came in to see me. So I took his case. I was super energetic, a young, brand new attorney. And then about 3 weeks later, after I sent the initial representation letter and so forth, about 3 weeks later, I got another letter from the defense counsel and said, word is that your client just slipped and fell in another Pick and Save store across town. So keep us informed every time he slips and falls in our store. So I knew right away, like, oh, I should get out of that case.
So, if somebody is a client that we no longer believe in their case, we can withdraw. And I think that's the right thing to do. Additionally, a lot of our job is managing people's expectations. And I always feel like it's my duty to help them through their claims process, but the facts are what they are. And, part of my job is to say, hey, listen, I hear everything you're saying. I know this is a terrible situation, but help me explain and show the facts that you're alleging. And if the facts are not there, I'm like, I would love to prove this fact, but there's no evidence to support it. And so it's nothing personal to me. It's just help me help you. Oh, there is no evidence of this, and this, and you want $10 million. It's not going to happen. You know what I mean? It's just, It's helping people understand the realities of their case when there's major issues.
So how did you make the leap from, you have 5 attorneys today in your practice? Is that right?
Yeah, we just hired another one today. We have 6 attorneys. Personal injury tends to be more admin driven, because probably only 15 to 20% of our cases go into litigation. I
see. And I notice on your site, you have a pretty robust support staff.
Yes. So personal injury in and of itself, there's a lot more admin. Each attorney in our firm is supported by 3 support members. So it's a pretty significantly admin-driven practice area.
So what are some of the major lessons that stick out to you, Jennifer, when you started to scale from that first attorney to where you are today with 6? How did you make that transition?
I think, I don't know if this was your experience, but just hiring and getting the first attorney on was one of the hardest battles. Just finding somebody that was the right attorney. It felt like I was just really struggling going through. And I know other people that didn't have that experience, but that was my experience. Like finding somebody who could replace me in production was challenging. And I tell people oftentimes now that sometimes it will take more than one attorney to replace the owner. The owner has unlimited drive and determination for their business. It's not always you're going to find somebody else that's going to come in and do the exact same numbers you could do.
When did you first realize that you were a leader?
I mean, the day you open a business, you're a leader. There's people looking to you going, what are we doing here? Why are we doing this? How are we doing this? You have to basically be able to take command and help people understand what needs to be done. And then you have to go on a long leadership journey to become, a much higher level leader over time, because what gets you to one level can keep you there.
Mm-hmm. There's a concept by a guy named John Maxwell. He talks about the leadership lid. And so the idea is that the business or the firm is only going to grow as high as your lid and your leadership. And you've obviously taken it from nothing, like starting it in your house, to a super successful firm today. How did you make that? What did you do to grow? Because your lid's a lot higher today than it was back in 13. So how did you raise that lid?
A lot of business coaching. I mean, I've spent hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars on personal coaching, business coaching, mindset coaching, parenting coaching. I mean, like coaching crazy person. I really just felt like finding people that already had the results I wanted and surrounding myself with them was part of my hack. When you're the owner of a business, you can get in a scenario where you're surrounded by people that won't tell you the truth. And you have to put yourself in situations where people will call you out and say, hey, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? So I'm a big fan of coaching.
And you're in our pre-call discussion, you're with a coach out of the Detroit area now?
Yeah, so I'm a member of Fireproof. I have been in that program for a while now. They have a firm that's about, I don't know, at least 5 to 6 times as big as mine. I think it's important to be around people that are significantly ahead of where you are and can say, when I was at your size, sometimes it's not, times change, things change, but there's a lot of wisdom you can get from somebody who's further down the trail than you. I'm also in several mastermind groups. So mastermind groups are where firms that, we all are in different markets get together and we come together and we put presentations on of the best things we're doing in our firm, and we share our wins, things that have not worked out. We share inside information about the industry. And those groups have been incredibly powerful. So I don't think it's just one thing. I mean, it's like a lot of different things you got to do to learn. And then you got to do personal development. You got to work on yourself. Like, where are your issues? A lot of lawyers have big egos. You got to deal with your ego.
Do you have any cases personally today?
So I'm still sitting in the managing attorney role. So I have monthly meetings with all the lawyers in my firm, and we go through kind of like strategizing on different cases. And, I have a pulse kind of on the what we call the highest dollar cases in the firm. Those are cases I'm still a little bit involved in, but I don't have like an actual caseload that I'm working on day to day, because it's just, there's so many other things I have to do.
Mm-hmm. As the top leader in your firm, how do you allocate your time between like what you just said with coaching and mentoring your team to doing the other things that are demanded of a CEO of a growing practice? How do you divide that time up?
We run the firm on EOS. And so, I kind of run my firm based off that method. We have a weekly leadership meeting. We have a leadership team that's been installed in the firm, and they help me to run the firm and run all the different departments. And that's probably my most important meeting of the week. That meeting has to happen no matter what. The managing attorney meetings are only, certain times of the month. I then have a marketing meeting. I have a finance meeting, and I have a kind of one-on-one meeting with our operations director. So, those are my major meetings. I'm very heavily still involved in the marketing by choice. I'm in a lot of videos and we shoot a lot of content. And then I'm always out networking and continuing to grow the brand and learn and, be the kind of spokesperson of the firm.
Yeah. A similar question, Jennifer. One of the things that intrigues me is how do you balance all of the competing interests? So you're a wife, a mom of 3 kids, you got a coaching business and a practice that's growing. What's a week look like to you? How do you keep all those balls in the air?
I don't know if there's something wrong with me, but I like to have a lot of things going on at the same time. It's just my personality. But I do run my schedule pretty tight. I mean, I go back to back to back to things, and I try to leverage my day, as much as I can. I'm sometimes guilty of over scheduling myself, but I start every day out pretty much at the gym. I have a trainer. I really feel like working out and your health is really important, especially as a lawyer and doing something where, you're under a lot of pressure or stress. You need to take that time for your health. And then, I have all my meetings on my calendar. But the one thing that I talk a lot about is that I decided a long time ago that I'm a business person and a lawyer, and I don't really... there's a lot of things I don't do, Jeff. I don't do any cooking. I don't do any cleaning. I don't do laundry. I live in my house like it's a hotel. I have a housekeeper. I have a nanny. I have an executive assistant. Those people allow me to spend my time in more productive ways. If you can make $500 an hour or $1,000 an hour, you have no business doing your own laundry, to be honest with you.
That is awesome. So let me end on this.
If I love doing something, if I loved cooking or something, I would do it. I'm just saying, I think a lot of people don't take inventory of what do you love to do and what do you really could get rid of? What could you delegate?
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry about the latency here. I know that's kind of sucked the energy out of the call here. Let me end with this one here. I have a quick lightning round and first reaction that jumps in your head. So what's your favorite quote?
I have a quote right here. In the middle of every difficulty lies opportunity.
Awesome. What's your favorite leadership resource, book or podcast?
You mean a book?
Yeah, anything.
Oh, I'm a podcast junkie. I listen to so many different podcasts, but what comes to mind right now? I really do like the stuff that we're learning in Fireproof right now on leadership. So that's been, where I've spent a lot of my leadership focus right now.
And as the last question is there something in your life that you're really proud of that most people don't know about?
I think a lot of people know that I'm proud of my commitment to my fitness journey. I just think that there's so many women out there that they don't prioritize themselves. And that's really something I really stand for. And I think that you can't be an example to your children if you don't take great care of yourself.
Yeah. That's terrific. Well, thank you, Jennifer. If someone wanted to get a hold of you and ask you about coaching or anything related to that, how would they do that?
You can contact me. My email is Jennifer@ATL Injury Law Group. And our website is, the same. And I'm on a lot of social media platforms. You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Jen Gore Lawyer, or, just look me up on LinkedIn, Jennifer Gore-Cuthbert. And I love meeting other lawyers that are interested in scaling.
Well, terrific. Thank you for your time today. It's been a great conversation.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to watch your journey.
Oh, thank you.